Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Healed and Chilled. And we are back with yet another awesome and amazing, wonderful special guest. And you guys know how I like to do it here. I like for the guest to have control of the narrative. So, if you would, in your own words, from your own point of view, can you please introduce yourself and we'll dive right into the interview.
Sounds great, Yana. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. My name is Daryl Dittmer, and I am currently an author of a couple books regarding recovery and life and showing up and what it takes to have the kind of life that I think most of us want to have. I don't know how much further into my detail you'd like me to go, Yana, so I'll let you lead the way.
Absolutely. And I think that that's a really great space to start from because it gives us so many avenues and windows. So, before we get into how you got to where you are today, can you tell us what that journey was like and then how you ended up being an author?
Sure. It's been a long journey, and mostly a very, very cool journey, but certainly a whole bunch of lessons along the way. So I grew up in the Midwest, and I grew up. My dad was a mechanic. My mom was took care of us kids, and there were three of us, and it was Protestant work ethic. It was, everybody's dad seemed to work at either General Motors, Ford, or Chrysler. That was just kind of how it went in the Midwest at that time. And I was it was a pretty strict family upbringing. My dad was a pretty tough guy, and actually my mom was pretty tough as well. So there seemed like there were a lot of expectations on us
Mhm.
as kids. And I'm not sure that that's necessarily what drove me into drinking and drugs at a fairly young age, but that's what I went to. And to make what could be a long story fairly short, is my drinking and drugging progressed through my teens to the point where when I was 18 years old, toward the end of my 18th year, I was told that I needed to be in a drug and alcohol treatment program, which I did just after I
Mhm.
turned 19. So here I am, a scared kid, not really, thinking he's tough, but not really being tough, just scared, and
Mm.
acting tough, and I didn't know how to live my life. And I also didn't know how to recover. I didn't know how to be a person who
Mm.
was better. And so I've spent the last several decades working on me and working on my life and showing up for myself so that I can show up for other people and help them. And part of what I have wanted to do for a long time, and have done it informally, I wanted to help people, and that's
Mm.
why I ended up writing both of my books. Was to I've had wonderful mentors. I've had wonderful people come into my life and teach me things in terms of living, in terms of business, and in terms of meditation and breath work, and just
Mm.
wonderful people in my life. And I want to pass those things on. And
Mm.
I want to be able to give those things away, because that's the only way that we continue that cycle of helping others with our experience.
Yes, yes, very well said. And first off, just want to thank you for sharing and being vulnerable in that way because this is definitely a space where I really, really value authenticity and authentic stories and people who have experienced different things but decided that they wanted to do better. And then from there, took the next step and decided that they wanted to teach others and not just hold and hoard the information. So, why was it important for you as you're healing through your own personal journey? Why was it important for you to then also help others? Why not just keep that information for yourself?
I love that question, Yana. That's a great question. I think that it's really important, and as I've grown and changed and started to understand the flow of life, and I've studied, different religions and philosophies and Eastern and Western and all kinds of different stuff. And I love them all, and they're all valuable, and they all have things to teach us. And so one of the things that I've learned is that we only get to we can't just keep it. Everything needs to flow. Everything is
Mm,
circular. Everything continues to move. And if you stop up a river, it gets stagnant. And
yeah.
so you have to allow the river to flow, and allow the knowledge to flow and the experience to flow. And the way that I learned to allow those things to flow is to share them, and
Mm,
and really try to help other people. And then it's that person's responsibility at some point, as they gather experience and hopefully wisdom and those sorts of things, to continue that flow. So I just think that's crucially important, because if it stops with us, and I can speak for me, if it stops at me, what have I done?
mm,
What am I going to do with that experience? What am I going to do with the things and the gifts that I've been given? I have to give them away. And that's how we keep it going. I feel like that's how
mm.
we make the world a better place.
Yes, 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 yes. I definitely agree. And I think that there's so many people out here who are looking for the next step in their own personal journeys. And it's so wonderful that there's also people like yourself and like myself and like a lot of people that I'm meeting along this podcast journey who are like, look, I may have been in this particular situation that's similar to you. Here, you can follow this path that I've created, and here you can do this and that. So was that something that you always thought, and that's why you decided, oh, let me create this book because it was something that was instilled in you throughout life? Or was that something that you developed as you were studying these different philosophies?
I'd say it was both. It was when I got out of drug and alcohol treatment. I was 19, so I didn't have a clue, and people were teaching me things, and I was heavily influenced by the 12 steps, and the 12 steps it's just a roadmap, and people make sometimes a huge deal out of the 12 steps, and it's just a roadmap for living. It's a way for me
Mm,
to get rid of the blockages in me and in my
mm,
life and move forward. So that was a heavy influence on me in terms of moving my life forward. And then just living was the experiential part of living, and starting to understand that this journey is really about that.
mm,
I can do a number of things with my life. The wonderful thing that most of us have been given in this life, and I think it's a beautiful gift, is a choice. We have a
mm,
choice. Do I want to show up, and do I want to do the work, and do I want to
mm,
continue forward, and do I want to take risks, and all of those things that will continue to propel me, even if I'm scared, even if I don't feel like it,
mm.
all of those things, right?
Yes.
And that's what it's about for me, and that's what I have tried to live,
Mm,
so that even if somebody's watching my life, and say, wow, this dude's actually doing something. He's
mm,
not resting on his laurels. He's not resting on, oh, well, I did this and now I can stop. We were talking
mm.
before we hit record, and it's like, you just keep going. And I'm
Yeah.
busier than I've probably ever been. And, whether I want to be or not, but I just,
Yeah.
life is worth pursuing. And that's the beautiful part of it, because we get to do that.
Yes, 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 yes. And let's dive into how this all translates into your books and things, and let's get to and let's do it because even in everyday life, the average person is dealing with a lot of stuff, like just existing as a human, no matter what they are or whatever else is going on. If you live on this planet long enough, you're going to be experiencing a lot of different ups and downs. And so sometimes the additional going to get to the goal puts a strain on people. Like they're like, oh well, I already gotta do X, Y, and Z. How am I supposed to add this into it? But that's where what you said comes in. Like you just got to do it anyway. You got to do it. You got to make time. So can you walk us through how what you offer in your books, how that relates, and then just your any additional insight that you're like, oh, I could share this.
Yeah, for sure. It's, you know, nothing happens in my life, and I can just use myself as an example, and that's really what my books are designed to do, is using the stories of my life, and some sad and some happy and some messed up, and whatever, just a
Mm,
what it's life happening. That's what my books are about. But then what are the lessons that I learned in my life?
mhm,
And so that's what I attempt to share. And I have a choice every single day when I get up. Am I going to do what I know I need to do, what's in front of me to be done? I did it today, and this is a simple little thing. I was putting off making a phone call to this guy who was doing some tree work for me. I needed some limbs taken down and that sort of thing. And and then I found, and I had set an appointment with this guy, but he couldn't do one part of the work. And then I
mm,
found another guy who was able to do all of the work afterwards. So I didn't really want to call the first guy because he was such a nice guy, and I didn't want to let him down.
mm,
I didn't want him to feel bad, all that kind of thing. And normally I'm not like that. I'm like, okay, it's business. I'm sorry, but this is how it went. But I put it off for a few days, and I'm like, you know what? I
mm.
just got to do that, and I'll just call the guy, and it's not a big deal. It's just a
Right.
little example of something that I could say, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. And sometimes we do that with really important things.
Yep.
And that's what I think my books try to portray, is because many people will say this, and I want to impart that I'm now saying it, but it's very true. You only get so much time on this planet. You only get so much
Mm,
time to do what you got to do. And the question
mm,
for myself is, and I had to ask myself this: how do I want to live? Do I want to live? Do I want peace of mind? Do I want great relationships? Do I want financial
mm,
security? Do I want contentment? Do I want physical health? If I want
mm,
those things, I have to show up and do the things that support that. All of those items in my life, all of those wants that I have, because there's a big difference between hoping and
mm,
and making things happen. And hoping doesn't get me anywhere, but making things happen gets me wherever I want to go. And that's probably the biggest message of my book, because I didn't come from money. I didn't come from, anything like that. I didn't come being taught about peace of mind. I didn't wasn't
mm,
taught about contentment. I wasn't taught about physical health, all of those things. It's a do-it-yourself project, right? Life is a do-it-yourself project.
mm.
And I think that's a
Yeah.
huge message to impart, that nobody's going to do it for us. And I have to take
Mm.
responsibility, and that's absolutely some of the keys to my life and my books and what I try to teach people.
Yeah, and that's very well said. So I usually save this for later, but I'm gonna give you a signature round of applause. Just
Oh,
because
thank you.
yeah, that was so very well said. And
Thank
like
you.
you guys who are listening can't see, but I was like nodding and snapping and doing the whole thing like if I was at a seminar just now. Just because it's very true. And I think that a lot of times as a society, we're sold that, oh, just just hope it works out and, just do this thing. And now it's coming out like, actually, you can hope all day, but you got to get up and do something too. So what journey does the reader go through in like both of your books, and like how do we get to know you better as a person, as a visionary, as someone who wants to help? Like, what is the journey that we go through, and would we see life from your perspective, or would we end up seeing ourselves differently by the end?
I would say both. I would say that, the journey starts with me as a young person and my surroundings and how I grew up, and stories about my parents, and stories about my brothers and sisters, or brother and sister, and stories about me, and probably why I started to turn out the way I did in my teens, which wasn't the greatest. I'll just tell this little story. It's kind of silly,
Mhm.
but it's indicative of my mind at that time. It was so I don't know how old I am, 7 or 8 years old, and my brother and I find out that there's a big beehive in one of the trees behind our house. And the tree isn't very tall. It's maybe 7 or 8 feet tall. So these bees are pretty close to the ground. And my brother and I, every few days, we take some stones and throw them at the tree to get the bees to come out and see how many times we'd get stung. There's something really
Oh.
wrong with that. There's there's something really wrong with that. But those are the kinds of things we did because and this is 7 or 8 years old, I became addicted to some sort of excitement, some sort of I got to shake it up, some sort
Mm.
of I don't know how to be feel good the way I am. I have to do something else.
Mm.
And that was kind of indicative of just the sort of weird ideas that we would have, and the weird things that we would do, and it was kind of crazy. So the journey is, there's times when I've had guns pointed at my face. There's times when I've had, you know, uh, issues with the law, just,
Mm.
lying, cheating, stealing, all that sort of stuff. But then it goes into recovery, and,
Mm.
recovery isn't really different unless I make it different. And so that's another
Mm.
part of the journey is what did I have to do in my life to ensure that I was continuing to move my life forward, and I
Mm.
was continuing to take risks, and that's the journey that I try to take the reader on is you can go from this weird addicted to excitement, and go into drugs and alcohol and all that sort of thing kid with, a background that didn't include all of the things that, I was fortunate to be able to acquire as time went on in my life through recovery. So,
Mm.
and the lessons that I learned along the way, I think the lessons that I learned along the way were wonderful, and I accepted mentors into my life, and I was able to be, humble enough to learn and to listen and to be teachable, and because I knew I
Mm.
didn't have a clue. And so those are some of the things that I talk about, and that's really the journey that the reader goes on. And the last probably 25% of my book is the actual lessons about willingness and honesty with
Mm.
myself, and giving up blame and giving up victimhood, and those
Mm.
sorts of things where I can, if I take those roadblocks away, my life can go wherever I want it to go. But I
Yes.
have to remove the roadblocks. And so that's the journey of my books.
Wow, sounds like a riveting journey. So my next question is it's kind of like I had so many questions, like narrow one down because I just when you're talking, I have like, oh well, what about this? What about this? Because I'm just genuinely curious. But the one that I nailed down was you mentioned teachable, and then also being honest with yourself. And a lot of times when people come from more challenging backgrounds that can lead into various situations, it can make you hard to trust people. Like if you've experienced certain things and gone through certain situations, you're like, So how do you get from being like non-trusting in a way to being able to accept help to being teachable? Because I would imagine there had to have been some um, amount of discourse from A to B.
For sure. And I think one of the most important and difficult lessons that we can have in this lifetime, and it may happen many times, it's happened many times to me, is I get sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Mm,
And that is a catalyst for change. And many times that's a catalyst for saying, I don't know, can someone please help me? Because
yeah.
I can try and try to do things and to change things and to, or not, if I feel like I know it all, what am I going to change? If I feel
Right.
like I've got all the answers, what is there to change? But then we get to that point, and I think most people do at one point or another, whatever it is. It can be addictions, it can be addiction to comfort, it can be drugs, it can be
Mm,
alcohol, it can be a lot of different things. Food, I mean, there's a number
yeah.
of different things that we can be addicted to in this life. And so when those kind of things take control of us and take control of our lives, I believe that there are these crossroads that we'll come to many times, and the crossroad will be a moment of clarity and a moment of honesty with ourselves where we say, you know what? I just can't do this anymore. And we make a
Mm,
decision at that point. Either we keep doing what's hurting us or we make a decision to change. And if we make a
yeah.
decision that we want to change, the only way to do that is to become teachable and to
Mm,
become, honest with ourselves and show some humility. So that's really, that's kind of the course that I've taken. And I've taken that many times in my life. There'd be times when I'll be doing
mhm,
something, I'll be like, I did it with work. I can be addicted to work. I was addicted to nicotine. I've been addicted to food at times in my life.
mhm,
So I have to, those little moments of clarity and those moments of honesty, I have to make the decision that I'm going to change. And
mm.
and the only way to change is to find out how. And that's where the rubber hits the road.
Yep, absolutely. Well said again. So we are kind of we're definitely not finished, but we're kind of at like the halfway point, a little bit further. Is there anything that you wanted to discuss or highlight that we've not already touched on?
I have a story, and I'll keep it short. But I've
Oh,
got
go ahead.
another story if you if you have time for it.
Yeah, I love
I'll tell the first
stories.
one. So when I first got involved in recovery and went through treatment and did all that, I was told that I needed to find a mentor. In the 12 steps they call it a sponsor, and that was somebody who could help me just make sense of the whole thing. And
Mm,
so my growing up was, it was wrestling with problems, it was fighting with life, it was fighting with everything. If it doesn't fit, get a bigger hammer. You're
mm,
not hurt if there's not a bone sticking out, all that kind of thing. Get up, walk
mm.
it off, all that kind of stuff. And you had to be tough,
Yeah.
and that was kind of the environment that I grew up in. So when I find my sponsor, I'm talking about all my problems and issues and my fights and my battles and everything I'm wrestling with. And he just got my attention, and he said, Daryl, when you stop fighting, the fighting stops. And I was like,
Mm,
oh. So it made about, 10% sense to me at that time. And I've been
mm,
mulling that over for the rest of my life's journey. And he is so right. Most of the fights start inside of me. Most of the
mm,
issues start inside of me. And that means that the answers also reside
mm.
in me. And so that's the big thing. And that's the first story I wanted to tell. I have another short one, but we'll go with that one for the moment.
Oh, well, I'd be happy to hear your second story
Yeah,
if you'd like to share.
sure, sure.
Yeah, of course.
This is one that has to do with humility, but it's and this was from many years ago as well, but I would go to the 12 step meetings, and there was this meeting on Friday night, and you kind of get in this groove of going to them. And this was early on in recovery and that sort of thing. And so I'm just trying to figure stuff out. And I'm hanging out with a bunch of dudes that are my age. Some of them care about recovery, some of them don't. You know, some of them are serious, some of them aren't. And that's fine.
Mm,
It was just the nature of what it was. I was serious about it.
yeah.
I was my soul had been scraped along enough, and I didn't want it
Mm,
anymore. So I was ready to change. And we go to this meeting in this Friday night community center in a nearby city, and there was this older gentleman. His name was Jimmy, and just a really chill dude, and very, you could just tell he was serene, and he had been in recovery about 40 years at that point. So we kind of looked at Jimmy like, oh man,
mm,
it's Jimmy, like he's kind of like a deity. That's sort of how we looked at him. But
mm,
and he didn't say a whole lot, but we're in this meeting, and he was the only person out of, I don't know, probably somewhere between 100 and 200 people in this meeting. It was a big meeting. He would get up and he would fill up the coffee carafe, and he would go pour people's coffee and fill up their coffee. And I'm looking and I'm just like, what a cool thing to do. Like
mm,
he's got the longest amount of recovery of anybody, but he's doing that sort of service work and helping
mm,
people, and it was just a beautiful thing to watch. And that was great. But Jimmy would always say, and this is why I remember it, because I watched him in his life, and he would say, if you want to be in recovery and you want to have a successful life and you want to wake up in the morning with a smile on your face, you have to learn how to stay small. And so that stay small vernacular has been something that's hung with me for a long time. And what it means is that I can be of service, and I can help other people, and I can learn, and I can not get too big for my britches, and I can be,
mm,
a person that pays attention to people who I want to be like, and listen to them, and
mm.
find mentors, and don't know too much, and all that sort of thing. So
Right.
so that was some great advice, and two very wonderful people that had been in my life, and they're both deceased now, but
Mm,
beautiful human beings that shared and gave of themselves,
mm.
things that to me I've been carrying around for a long time, and they're indispensable. They're sitting in my
Absolutely.
heart.
Well, thank you for sharing those gems as well. It's always nice to learn from each other. And there's a few things that I wanted to add to, I guess. So, I definitely can appreciate the humility aspect as well, just because oftentimes um, I find that people, when they get to the next level, either they're really helpful to those who come behind, or they're a bit like, ugh, like you want to sit, you think you can sit with me? So it's
Mm,
refreshing to know that you had that experience. And then I'll
mm,
just also quickly share that I started these interviews actually because um, I knew that there was more to life than what I was currently experiencing every day, and like I was like, I need to find a way that I can learn from more people. And so they're like, you watch any seminar, they're like, oh, just ask someone to do a lunch with you. So I'm like, okay, do you want to do lunch? People, strangers are like, I don't want to have lunch with you. I don't even know you. But everybody wants to be on a podcast. So that's
mm.
how the interviews actually started, just because I wanted to learn more about the world. So I appreciate you for sharing your story and being here. I have a few more closing questions, of course. And of course, we'll, do a quick synopsis thing. But I have three cliche questions that I like to ask everybody. But before that, is there anything that you're like, now, oh, I wish I would have said this, or oh, I wish I would have mentioned about that before I ask my cliche questions?
No, I think I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for asking.
Absolutely. Alrighty. So the first cliche question is, if you can think of a time when you were younger and in a darker space, what's one piece of advice that you know now that you wish you would have known back then?
One piece of advice, I guess, that I would have given myself back then is chin up, it's going to get better.
Mm,
One of the most important things I learned going forward is this too shall pass. It always passes, everything passes. But the
mm.
tough part can be sometimes that the good times pass just like the bad times. And
Yeah.
which is okay because that's just how life goes. But this too shall pass would be the advice.
Absolutely. The second cliche question is the internet works in mysterious ways, much like the universe. So, is there any person, place, or organization that you would really like to work with if this interview did come across their internet?
Hmm. I honestly um I love Eastern thought and I love, can this be a person either with us or not with us?
Yeah, it can be whatever you want.
Excuse me. There's a guy that is said to have well, he did write, I guess, the Tao Te Ching, which is a Eastern philosophy book, and his name was Lao Tzu. And if I could
Oh.
meet him and sit down with him, because I've read that I don't know how many times in my life, but I just started reading it again. I was reading this sort of Eastern acupuncture, Taoism, Eastern medicine book recently, and it talked about Lao Tzu
Mhm.
again. And I was like, you know what? He would have just been the coolest dude. So
Hmm.
I would have a cup of tea with Lao Tzu.
Wow, that's awesome. All right. And then my final cliche question is of course, I'll put your links in the description and things, but if someone wants to purchase a book, what's the best way to do that? If someone wants to keep up to date with you, what's the best way to do that? And if someone wants to contact you, what's the best way to do that?
So the first thing, as far as my books are concerned, they're both on Amazon. If you just type in either "When I Stop Fighting" or "When You Stop Fighting," or my name, Daryl Dittmer, uh, you'll find the books on Amazon. The second question, I'm sorry, I got so wrapped
If
up in the first question.
Yeah, it's okay. If someone wants to keep up to date, like know what's going on and if you have any new books coming out.
Yes, I do a newsletter and I do some writing in terms of like blog type things. So you can find all that on my website, which is daryldittmer.com. And just to spell it out, it's DARYLDITTMER.com. And the third question, if somebody wants to get in touch with me, they can go to daryldittmer.com and you'll find my email address. You can certainly feel free to send me an email if you have questions about anything that I've said or my books or anything like that. And also places to sign up for my newsletter and for the blog writing.
Absolutely. I actually also have one, well, like two more things. So the first one, I usually don't do this, but I was just like, I just want to ask. So I'm just curious, in general, like what is the most valuable life lesson, like across your entire expansive journey? What is a if you had to say like, okay, tune out everything else, and it has to be different from it'll get this too shall pass. If you could give someone and say like, look, this is the golden piece of advice that I can give to you, or the golden gem, what would that golden gem be?
It would have to be that I'm wrestling with two right now, but I'm
Okay,
gonna
you can do two. We can do two. It's fine.
okay, we could do two. So the first one is to take a very honest look at yourself and your life and say, okay, where am I and where do I want to be?
Mm.
and if I'm not where I want to be, and how do I get there? How do I So it starts with being honest with ourselves, because I think it's very easy to get up every day and do what we do and work and kind of get in this rhythm, which I think, rhythms and routines are very important. But do I want a rhythm and routine that propels me to a life that I'm looking to lead, or that I'm
Mm.
longing to lead, or that something inside of me is telling me that I want to lead? Or am I just going through the motions and mailing it in? So I have to be honest with myself about that. What is my experience of life? And then the second question is, if I've decided that, what, my life isn't exactly what I want it to be right now, I'd like to do this and this
Mm.
and this, then the second thing is, you got to show up and you got to do the work. You got to
Yeah.
do the work. If you want to be healthier, you have to eat better food and exercise and all those sorts of things. If you want to get into a position where you have peace of mind every day, maybe it, is going to help to look into some sort of a religious experience or a meditation or a breath work. But the key is, I have to show up and I have to find out how to do it. And
Mm.
all of the information is out there. All of the information is out there. So there's no longer, when I was a kid, we used to have to go to encyclopedias in the library to figure stuff out. And all we got to do now
Mm.
is ask our phone, and our phone can tell us
Right.
exactly what to do. And so showing up is key. I have to utilize the tools that are given to me. And showing up
Mm.
is I think just a huge part of the journey.
Yes, very, very, very well said. And I feel like we had such a deep, deep conversation, and we didn't even go through that much time. So we do have a little bit more time. So I'm curious, is there any questions that you have for me? Anything that you're curious about?
So I know that and thank you. That's a wonderful. I love that you asked that, because I could just tell you're a beautiful human,
Thank
and
you.
yeah, and that just emanates from you. So I can feel the caring and the sincerity and
Oh.
those things, those wonderful traits. So I guess my question would be, I know you started the podcast to find out things, but I know you're also imparting things and imparting important things to people. What would be an example of something that you would like to impart to others based on the conversation we've had today?
Oh, that's a great question. So, I am actually a children's confidence coach. That's what I'm building towards. So that's where my goal is. Like, okay, here's where I am doing podcasts during my lunch break, and there's where I definitely want to be later. But what I heard from your story and what I want to do for the children that I serve is just really let them know, like, I'm there in whatever capacity that looks like. And so right now, I have mostly like children that I interact with regularly. It's like weekly and it's virtual because it's like video game clubs. But in that time, it's a very like safe space for them. So I want to really, 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 because I know, like, I don't know what people's lives are like. I don't know what is going on after the laptop closes or after the club ends, but I just want when they're in club for all of them to feel safe, seen, and heard. And I really want to just let them know, like, I'm not your parent or anything, but I like to say, like, I'm a big sister to like everybody because they're my students. And then the other thing is just further putting out like content for children who don't have like like 'cause one thing that I'm just gonna be honest, the thing that gets on my nerves with society is that people like to act like horrible things don't happen in the world, and, like, it's like, "Oh, well, you can't talk to children about if someone tries to kidnap them," but, like, what if someone does, you know? Like, are we supposed to just say, "Oh, be nice to this person?" No. So, I have been trying to balance, how do I without pushing the envelope. How do I get that message across? But after talking to you, I don't care about pushing the envelope because at the end of the day, the mission is more important. And like you said, you got to just do it. So here I am, waiting and like, oh, well, trying to dilute it. Like, how can I talk to the children if their parent abandons them? How can I say that without ruffling feathers or being PC? But at the end of the day, a lot of children, whatever the experience is, they're already past PC. And so here so yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. You've inspired me to get out of my own way of trying to be so PC in a world that I think is attacking children's innocence just in general. And I want to make content as well that is, lighthearted, of course, but also for children who are in various situations, like who might have a whatever that situation, who might be homeless. There are children who are homeless, might be in these things who don't have someone who can tell them about mindfulness, who can tell them about it's okay to say no, like it's okay not to allow yourself to be a doormat or be bullied or
Mm.
all those things. And so that is what you have given me. And I'm just so grateful because it's been something I wanted to do for a while, but I just kept getting in my own way. Like, you can't just say that. What if, but like, no, I can't say that. So thank you. I'll give you another round of applause because
Actually, I'm going to give you
wow.
one too, Yana. That
Oh,
was
thank
awesome.
you.
Yeah.
Thank
Very,
you. Yeah,
really
this
beautifully said, and thank you so much for saying that. And these some of the things that you said are things that I say, in terms of
hmm,
just don't be a doormat, and you have to get out there, and there's certain things you just have to do, and so that's
yeah.
wonderful. I'm so happy to hear that, and I'm happy you're in a position to teach young people those things, because absolutely crucial life lessons that most kids, I think, just don't receive.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because in today's world, with everything that's happening, whether you're a 7 or 70, like something's happening in your experience. So I just salute you as well and just sending so much good energy and things along your journey because the world needs more of us who are out here trying to help those who come next in whatever capacity. So this has been a riveting conversation. Did you have any other questions for me, just in case you had another one?
No, I don't. I've gotten a wonderful feel for you, and I had that, and I asked the first question, and it just rounded out and confirmed how it felt to be speaking with you and interacting with you. So,
Oh.
so thank you. Really, really beautiful.
Well, thank you. And I could say you're the first in history to get two signature rounds of applause. So you better mark this day down because it's never happened before. And I've been doing interviews for a few years. So put
That's
this in the
great.
calendar, folks.
Thank you.
Alrighty, guys. Of course, this has been such a fantastic conversation. I learned a lot. I know I've unlocked some. I don't even know what blockage that was, but thank you so much for sharing your story. And that's been unlocked. And so everybody that's listening, you guys better get these books and things and stay tuned with Daryl because he's doing some amazing, wonderful things out here and has already impacted me. And I know that he will impact you guys moving forward. And of course, links and things are in the description. Of course, you're always welcome back. And I hope everyone that listens has a great rest of their day. And we'll see you next time for an episode of Healed and Chilled.
Thank you, Yana. Thanks, everyone.